There are moments in history that change the world forever. Moments so powerful, so controversial, that even decades later, people are still asking the same question. Was it necessary? In August 1945, during the final days of World War II, the United States made a decision that would alter human history forever. They used atomic bombs against Japan. But why? Why would a nation choose such a devastating weapon? What led to this moment? And could it have been avoided? To understand this, we need to go back to a time when the world was at war. World War II was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. It began in 1939 and quickly spread across continents. Powerful nations formed alliances, and millions of soldiers were sent into battle. Japan was one of the key powers on the Axis side. Their military had already expanded across large parts of Asia. And in 1941, everything changed when Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, a US naval base in Hawaii. That single event brought the United States fully into the war. From that point on, the conflict between the US and Japan became intense and brutal. Battles in the Pacific were unlike anything seen before, fighting on islands, in jungles, across vast oceans. And one thing became very clear: Japan was not willing to surrender easily. Even when they were losing ground, their resistance remained strong. There were battles where soldiers fought to the last man. Kamikaze attacks, where pilots deliberately crashed into enemy ships. A strategy that showed just how far Japan was willing to go. By 1945, the war in Europe had ended. Germany had surrendered. But in the Pacific, the war was still going on, and it was costing lives. Thousands. Every single day. The United States faced a difficult situation. If they continued fighting using conventional methods, they would have to invade Japan directly. A full-scale invasion. Military planners estimated that such an invasion could result in hundreds of thousands of American casualties, and even more Japanese deaths. It would be long, it would be brutal, and it would be devastating for both sides. At the same time, the US had been working on something secret, something powerful, something never used before. This was known as the Manhattan Project, a top-secret program to develop the world's first atomic bomb. Scientists had discovered that splitting atoms could release enormous amounts of energy, enough to destroy entire cities. In July 1945, the first successful test of an atomic bomb took place. The result was beyond anything they had imagined. A single weapon with unimaginable power. Now the United States had a choice: continue the war and face massive casualties, or use this new weapon and force a quick end. There were also political factors. The Soviet Union was preparing to enter the war against Japan. The US wanted to end the war before that happened, to limit Soviet influence in the region. Time was running out, and the decision was made. On August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Hiroshima. In an instant, the city was transformed, buildings destroyed, lives lost. A level of destruction the world had never seen before. But Japan did not surrender immediately. 3 days later, on August 9, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. This time, the message was clear. The United States was willing to use this weapon again and again. Japan now faced an impossible situation. Their cities were vulnerable, their military was weakened, and a new kind of warfare had begun. Shortly after, Japan announced its surrender. World War II was over, but the impact of those decisions lasted far beyond the war. The use of atomic bombs remains one of the most debated events in history. Some argue that it saved lives, that it prevented a long and deadly invasion. Others believe it was unnecessary, that Japan was already close to surrender, that alternatives could have been explored. Even today, historians, experts, and ordinary people continue to debate this question. Was it the right decision, or a tragic mistake? But one thing is certain: it marked the beginning of the nuclear age, a time when humanity gained the power to destroy itself completely. And that power still exists today. Countries around the world possess nuclear weapons, weapons far more powerful than those used in 1945. The world has changed, but the question remains: what would you have done if you were in that position? Faced with that choice, would you have made the same decision? Because sometimes, history is not just about what happened, it's about understanding why and learning from it so that the same mistakes are never repeated again.